Hello. In this presentation, we're going to learn a little bit more regarding motor skills, why motor skills are important, and some common terminology that will often be used throughout the CHAMP after school program project. First off, motor skills are critical to the health and development of all individuals. Specifically, these skills support total human development. They aid with the social domain of how individuals interact with others, also with our emotional and cognitive development, how we process information, and how we successfully integrate our internal emotions and read social cues. So movement is fundamental to various aspects of life. Some common terms that we're going to probably discuss throughout this project include the word motor skills. Motor skills involve specific movements of the muscles to perform a certain task. When we look at motor skills, they are typically broken down into two components. You have these gross motor skills that use the large muscle groups that are in your legs, your torsos, and your arm. We often use these to jump, to propel our body through space, to hit implements with objects with implements. Examples could be walking, balancing, crawling, throwing, etc. And then there's also fine motor skills. These skills require more of the smaller muscle groups to perform tasks. So such as grasping a ball with your fingers or tracking a ball that's in flight. Throughout the CHAMP program, we do a combination. We really focus in on the gross motor skill aspect of movement. However, embedded in some of our activities are skills that focus in on the fine muscle groups, such as grasping and eye tracking. Two other important terms that are out there is the concept of motor learning and motor competence. Motor learning refers to a permanent change in your ability to perform a skill. And usually that happens when you have a lot of practice, a lot of feedback and experience doing that skill, such as learning to play a piano. It takes a lot of practice to learn that musical piece. You have to practice it, you have to experience successes and failures. And that's similar to motor learning. And in this CHAMP program, we learn through experiencing different movement tasks and movement activity. So we want to see a permanent change of an individual moving from an improficient mover to a more proficient mover. Motor competence is this global term that we often use to describe the level of expertise that we might possess as it relates to our movement ability, our motor skills. It looks at the underlying mechanisms that also interact with our with the range of motor skills, such as motor coordination, motor control, and various other qualities of movement. So we might say this kid is very competent in their motor ability, or they are not as competent. So again, this is a term we use to really describe the level of proficiency that a person exhibits in terms of their motor performance or their movement abilities. So returning back to motor skills, we see these skills as a building block for more advanced and sport-specific skills. They are critically important that we acquire these skills in order to engage in lifelong activity and movement. So a prime example will be if you're with friends outside and somebody decides, let's play a game of volleyball. If you are a person who don't feel competent in hitting the ball with your hands or your forearms as skills of volleyball, you might not engage in this form of activity. So we think during the early years, ages 3 to 6, that roughly that time frame is a critical time point where we start to acquire these skills. That basic level of proficiency is needed. So that's what we want to introduce individuals to these skills, give them an opportunity to practice and perform these skills so he can start learning movement constants relating to these various movement patterns. As they get older, between 6 and 12, that's when they start applying these skills in more context-specific situations. So now a little kid who between 3 and 6, they learn how to catch, they learn how to strike a ball with their hand, they learn how to kick. So now they can start applying those skills to a game of baseball or softball, a game of soccer. So putting it in the context of real world activities and type of events. And then lastly, as we get older, as we move through, our younger adolescence to adult years, we will continue to refine those skills and how we improve in those skills. And also, most importantly, start to engage in and using those skills to engage in lifetime physical activity. So again, it's important that we get the skill acquisition early in life. We then able to apply it to more context sport specific environments. And then later, the goal is that they're able to engage in a lifelong of health and physical activity engagement by having a strong foundation early in life in those basic fundamental motor skills. So when we look at gross motor skills, they're usually broken down into 3 components. We have locomotor skills, which are skills that propel your body through space. You're moving from point A to point B. These are skills like running, jumping, leaping, skipping, sliding, hopping, etc. And these are all skills that are components of the CHAMP program. We also have ball skills, or previously people might have called them object control or manipulative skills. These skills is when you manipulate objects with your hands and feet, such as kicking, throwing, striking an object with an implement, catching, etc. And then lastly, you have balance and stability. These are skills that help individuals maintain control of their body and their posture, dealing with weight transfer. It's critically important that kids are able to adjust their body position so they're able to move about space in their environment effectively. And all of these skills are underlying skills and constructs that we teach in CHAMP. So how does motor skills support physical activity? There's research that supports that motor skills indirectly influence physical activity through an increase in enjoyment in physical activity. Also, through play and physical activity, children learn and practice skills that become building blocks for more complex movement, i.e., such as sports and physical activity. And also, we found that physically active children spend more time learning and improving on new skills. So again, getting back to that example I gave of a young child or an adult who's asked by friends to engage in a game of softball. If he or she does not have those basic skills or feel competent in those skills, they might not engage in a sport or engage in that activity at that time. And also, people who are more competent in skills, they're more eager to engage and learn new skills and new activities. So it's like this directional relationship of the more competence I have, the more eager I am to engage, and the more confidence I feel in myself in my ability to engage in these skills and also learn new skills and activities. And this goes back to some of the work of a researcher named Vern Stiefelt from Michigan State University, where he developed this model that focuses on this proficiency barrier. So as you see here during the early years, we have these reflexes that everybody tends to go through during the neonatal period. But really focusing in on the early childhood years where we are with our CHAMP program is that these basic fundamental motor skills that are needed, catching, bouncing, creeping, dodging, dribbling, pushing, pulling, leaping, kicking, etc. That these are basic skills that need to be acquired during that early childhood period. And in order for these skills are needed in order for individuals to break through this proficiency barrier so they can then engage in various activities during the middle childhood through their adulthood. These basic skills or fundamental motor skills are needed so they can then move to this, as they say in this model, transitional motor skills. Again, it's like applying these skills to various sports. They have street hockey, wiffle ball, rope skipping, paddle tennis, etc. So you need to know how to catch, you need to know how to strike, you need to know how to roll in order to engage in these transitional skills. And then later on in adulthood and later on in later childhood years, to use these skills in various sport specific skills and dances. Another model that supports the importance of motor development, and this is our motor skills as it relates to health, is that there's a positive developmental trajectory between motor competence and health outcomes. Work that I've done along with various researchers around the world and individuals on this project, like Dr. Palmer and Dr. Pfeiffer, have found that there's a positive relationship between motor skills and physical activity. Kids who are more competent tend to engage in more physical activity. There's also a positive relationship between motor competence and health-related fitness. Kids who are more competent tend to be more physically fit in terms of their cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, and muscular endurance. And there's also a positive association between motor competence and perceived competence. Kids who are more competent in their skills actually perceive, or their self-perceptions are quite positive also. So all of these factors, create this positive spiral of engagement. As you're more competent, you engage in more activity. You're more competent, you tend to be more fit. You're more competent psychologically, you feel that you have better perceptions in your ability to move. And then that also, we see a positive relationship between your perceived competence and physical activity. So those individuals who perceive that they're more competent tend to engage in more physical activity. We also found an inverse relationship between motor competence and weight status, which is very important due to the weight concerns of children and youth in the United States. We found that kids who are more competent in their motor skills tend to have a better weight outcome or weight status, lower body fat percentage, a lower BMI. So then again, we see this trajectory of health where the more competent you are, the better weight outcomes that individual possesses. So we know that motor skills are important, but there is a need for intervention in programs, because from the literature we have seen for numerous years in motor development, we know that kids who do not receive instruction, they don't have the opportunities to practice, and that these skills are not being reinforced, we're not seeing changes in their skills, that they remain flatline, or they have this very staggered trajectory of development. So it's very important that these skills are taught, practiced, and reinforced. And this is often through motor skill interventions and some type of formalized type instruction, like physical education programs, and hopefully this after-school program that we are doing at your site. We also have found in a large number of studies that children tend to be underperforming in certain groups, and that's a concern. Individuals who are at risk in terms of low socioeconomic status, living in underserved communities, those who are gendered, i.e. specifically girls, they have lower skills compared to their counterparts of higher SES, higher resource communities, and boys. So again, that really gets at the notion of the need for intervention programs and treatment programs to really enforce, practice, and teach young children these basic fundamental motor skills so they can have a positive trajectory of health across their lifespan. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again.